Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. My name is Julian, and in today's episode, we're going to be discussing players that you can consider dropping ahead of Week 11 of the fantasy hockey season. This week already looks like it's going to be an absolute disaster. There have been a lot of games canceled. Calgary, Florida, and Colorado's games have all been canceled until Christmas. So the first half of the week is going to be pretty rough. It is a two-part week. So, if you don't need to drop players, don't do it. If you can just put guys on IR and pick up more guys, that might be the best play if you only have a limited amount of moves per week. So you don't necessarily have to drop these guys if for some reason you still have these guys on your team. But obviously, if you need to drop someone in order to make a move, these are the guys that you should be considering dropping right now. First on the list is Tyler Seguin of the Dallas Stars. He only has 1 point in his last 6 games and 2 in his last 11. That's not good at all, and he only has 11 points in 27 games over the whole season. What's the difference between him this year and in past years? Well, the big difference is that he's not shooting the puck. Not shooting the puck is going to give him less opportunities to score, and it also makes him a lot less valuable in fantasy because shooting the puck is one of the most important things in fantasy hockey. So his shooting percentage is still normal, and his on-ice shooting percentage is relatively normal as well. But because he's not shooting the puck, he's not scoring as many goals, and that's the big issue with Tyler Seguin. It doesn't really help for his offensive production that Dallas isn't really giving him good line mates. But honestly, I'm pretty done with Tyler Seguin at this point. Obviously, if you're able to trade him for someone, go ahead and do so. Otherwise, you're going to have to probably drop this guy. Then I have Tyler Toffoli of the Montreal Canadiens. And he's injured for a good while. He was supposed to miss about 8 weeks. He had surgery. So he's going to be out a while. And right now there are so many players that are being given COVID designations. If you need the IR space for those guys, I understand that, right? You only have a certain amount of IR space, and Toffoli's occupying one of those spots for a long time. Toffoli honestly hasn't been that great this year. So if you need to drop him to make IR space for other players, go ahead and do so, because honestly, he's going to be there for a while, and he's not even that great, so it's not really worth holding that and sacrificing a roster spot for someone who's injured. Then I have Sonny Milano of the Anaheim Ducks, and he's slowed down quite a bit as of late. Anaheim finally doesn't really have that optimal of a schedule anymore, so Sonny Milano isn't someone you necessarily have to hold in most leagues anymore. In deep leagues, absolutely hold on to Sonny Milano. He's on a pretty good line, and the Ducks have been a pretty good team this year, so I don't absolutely hate holding on to Milano in deeper leagues. But in shallower leagues, Sonny Milano is definitely someone who's droppable, considering that the Ducks don't really have a favorable schedule anymore. Next is someone who I've had on this list many times, and that's Alexis Lafreniere. Still playing on the third line in New York, not really getting much for power play time, so the opportunity isn't really there. He's supposed to be a really talented player, but the Rangers aren't really giving him a shot to showcase that, nor has he really given them a reason to give him a shot to showcase that. So to me, Lafreniere this year is another watch. Just drop him in all leagues except for dynasty leagues and hope that he does better next year, because this year is just not going to be the year for Alexis Lafreniere. Plus, the first half of this week before Christmas, the Rangers only play 1 game, so it's definitely not worth holding Lafreniere for the 1 game that New York plays this week. And last but not least are JT Compher and Logan O'Connor of the Colorado Avalanche, and like I said earlier, all of Colorado's games are canceled through Christmas, guys, so there's no reason to hold on to low-owned Colorado players like these guys. Once the NHL resumes after Christmas, Gabriel Landeskog should pretty much be back, so these guys are not really going to have that big of a role, and therefore are very easily droppable. Jumping into some defensemen now, and the first guy I have on the list is Ivan Provorov of the Philadelphia Flyers. He's 70% owned, so he's definitely the highest owned player that I have on this list. And listen, if you're in a really deep league, obviously you're not dropping Ivan Provorov, right? That would be nuts. There's definitely no better defenseman on the wire. He still sees a little less than half of Philadelphia's power play time, and he's a really good 5-on-5 guy. The thing is, he's just not really putting up that much for peripherals this year, and obviously his points aren't really there this year, right? He has 10 points in 28 games, which isn't absolutely terrible, but it's not great either. It's not a very good point total. And listen, Provorov will continue to put up some peripherals, not too much, and he'll continue to get a point every now and then, but he's not someone that you absolutely have to own in your league. If there are better defensemen out there, go ahead and drop Provorov and grab one of those better defensemen that are actually going to do something for you. Next is Kevin Shattenkirk of the Anaheim Ducks, 67% owned. Yeah, I know he has a couple points in his last couple games, but I don't think he's going to be able to sustain that. He had a really good start to the season, then went super quiet for the past few weeks. And I guess now he's starting to put up points again, but if you want to ride that point streak, if you want, but I don't think it's going to last too long. Shattenkirk does get power play time, but he's not that amazing of a defenseman. If he's not putting up points, he's really not doing much for you, as you were able to see in the past few weeks. Unless you're in a super, super deep league, Shattenkirk is a pretty easy drop at the moment. Next is Dmitry Orlov, and somehow he's 64% owned. He's never someone that I ever suggested on a waiver wire video, because to me, he's not that great of a player. He's a good player, but he's not that great of a player for fantasy. And the thing is with Orlov is, yeah, he has a pretty safe floor. He hits and he shoots at least once per game. So there is a floor, but I don't really see the ceiling. He only gets to play power play too. And yeah, he was able to put up some points recently. He was able to put up quite a few points, but that's not something that he's ever really been able to sustain in his career. So don't expect a lot of points from Orlov. If there is someone better on your wire that can put up some points for you, I would grab him over Dmitry Orlov, because honestly, he had a good hot streak, but now that's over, so he's definitely someone who's droppable. Next is Jamie Drysdale, 24% owned, and he was scoreless through 6 games, had no points at all. Finally got a point in his last game, so now has 1 point in his last 7. Not super great for Drysdale. Listen, I suggested Drysdale in a lot of videos because the last couple weeks, Anaheim had really favorable schedules. They played on off nights. Drysdale now, he's not really doing much. He does still man the top power play, so the opportunity for points is there. So if you're in a super deep league, there's probably nobody available that's going to have a better opportunity to put up some points. But right now, he's just not doing it. So if there's anybody at all who's even putting up peripherals, it's probably better than Drysdale right now. And last but not least, I have Nick Jensen of the Washington Capitals. And earlier in the season, he was also, like Orlov, putting up some points and putting up a lot of peripherals. The peripherals seem to have dried out, and so have the points. So honestly, Nick Jensen is a really easy drop right now. Moving on to goalies now, and the first goalie on the list is the guy who I unfortunately bought a jersey for Seattle, and that's Philip Grubauer. Listen, I didn't have super high expectations for Seattle this year, and that's why I was low on Grubauer going into the season, but I didn't see Grubauer doing this badly this season. He's by far been the worst goalie in the league. He lets in the first shot of the game like half the games, it seems, and he's 20.5 goals saved below expected. That's like double the next worst goalie in the league. It's so bad for Philip Grubauer, and it's bound to turn around, right? I've been saying that all year, but it hasn't. It just hasn't. Listen, if you're in a deep league and there are no other starting goalies available, unfortunately, you kind of have to hold on to Philip Grubauer, but man, it is really hard holding on to a guy who's really doing poorly for you every single night. In categories leagues, definitely drop him. If you're in a point-based league, he's still holdable if there are no other goalies, right? But man, it's tough to hold on to Philip Grubauer. Next is Mikko Koskinen of the Edmonton Oilers, 65% owned, and it looks like Mike Smith is going to be coming back soon. So once Smith comes back, Koskinen's role is going to be really limited. I don't think he's going to get a whole lot of starts because he has not been that good lately. Mike Smith is going to go back to getting the bulk of the starts in Edmonton, so Koskinen is going to be a drop in the vast majority of leagues. Then I have Spencer Knight, who's been absolutely brutal this year. It sucks. I've had really high hopes for him this year. I thought he was going to take over for Bobrovsky because Bobrovsky had been brutal the previous 2 seasons. Bobrovsky's been a lot better this year, so Knight hasn't really gotten that many starts. And the starts that he has gotten, he hasn't looked that great. He had a couple good starts here and there, but overall, not a great season for him. And now he's been sent to the AHL. It is just a loan, so he should be called back up. But honestly, overall, he's only getting 1 start out of every 3 or 4. So it's not really worth holding on to Spencer Knight in the vast majority of leagues. And he's still owned in half the leagues. And next I have Vitek Vanacek of the Washington Capitals. And Samsonov has been absolutely fantastic for Washington over the past few weeks. So Vanacek has not been getting a lot of starts. He's still about 50% owned, so he's definitely droppable in more leagues. And last but not least, I have Charlie Lindgren of the St. Louis Blues, and he's been absolutely fantastic over the past few games. He has 5 wins in a row now for St. Louis, but the thing is, Binnington should be back as soon as next game for St. Louis. So when Binnington comes back, I don't think Charlie Lindgren's going to see a whole lot of starts anymore, unfortunately. He's been very, very good. Hasn't faced the toughest teams, though, let's be honest. But yeah, definitely once Binnington comes back, Charlie Lindgren is probably going to be a drop just because Binnington is their starter in St. Louis, and Lindgren won't see a whole lot of starts going forward. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hope you guys enjoyed the content today. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.